Welcome to another edition of Arizona Wildcats Insiders Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison, and we are 44 days away from Arizona football. You can smell it in the air. No grass in the air with artificial turf, but we are also close to training camp as well as the Wildcats try to gear up for the 2025 season after falling short of expectations in 2024, going 4-8 after beginning the year in the AP poll top 25 at number 21. It was a disappointing year for Arizona, but they were able to recollect, mix things up on the coaching staff with new offense coordinator Seth Dagey, new defense coordinator Danny Gonzalez, who was promoted from linebackers coach, and new additions to the roster in terms of the transfer portal, incoming freshmen. Arizona's recruiting class was the top 50 recruiting class last season, despite all the issues for Arizona. So help is on the way, Arizona Wildcat fans. Some help that needs to be developed and worked with for the next couple of years, but some immediate help as well as Brett Brennan enters year 2 at Arizona with, I wouldn't say necessarily the hot seat, but definitely the magnifying glasses on Brett Brennan and Arizona as they try to gear back up and try to get back to bowl contention and being a competitive football team out there on the field. Both Brett Brennan and Noah Fafita were at Big 12 Media Day talking about those expectations and how they fell short of them and how they are trying to get everything back on track after a horrible season. Brennan really owned up to it, talking about, how they kind of started a little bit behind the 8 ball, but didn't use that as an excuse, how things were going through growing pains through that first year. Noah Fafita talked about it as well in terms of becoming a better leader out there on the football field in terms of communication with the football team. I know he's been working hard on that in terms of in-game communication. He's been a great leader on and off the field in terms of character and leadership, but just needs to be a little bit more vocal. So those were some of the bigger things he was working on and using his legs as well in this Seth Dagey offense. Last year at this time, Arizona was going into a non-conference that featured New Mexico at home, featured NAU at home, and a Big 12 opponent in Kansas State on the road in a weird non-conference matchup due to the fact that the scheduling was done so many years prior to today. So they went 2-1 during that stretch, and in that Kansas State game, Arizona was in the game. They're in it 14-7 at half. You had that punt return by Kansas State that took the lead for the Wildcats there. And after that, Arizona just really couldn't collect. They couldn't regather, and the offense had a lot of issues. They couldn't move the ball downfield. So eventually, after the defense was able to hold Kansas State for a long period of time, they collapsed. They allowed 17 points in the second half. That's a 17-0 unanswered streak right there in the second half for Kansas State. And the Wildcats would go on. The U of A Wildcats would go on to fall 31-7. So they ended the non-conference 2-1. And, I think a lot of people expected them to do that, but the way that they did it just didn't sit right with the team. And it kind of laid the foundation for the rest of the year and set the tone for the rest of the season. This year, Arizona will be hosting Hawaii. They have 3 non-conference games this year, hosting Hawaii, Weber State, and Kansas State, finishing up that home-and-home series that was scheduled so many years ago. And again, it's another weird Big 12 matchup in the non-conference, but in today's world of teams moving conferences, switching everything up, that's kind of what you've been seeing across the board recently. It's hard to reschedule those games. So with Arizona opening up at home against Hawaii, I think that's an interesting matchup in the sense that it's a team that you can't overlook. Yes, it's a long trip for Hawaii football. Yes, Hawaii football isn't very good. They have been on a downward trend over the last several years. And yes, Arizona's at home, but you can't take it for granted. I think last year, Arizona slightly took that New Mexico game for granted. Yes, they won 61-39, but Arizona's defense struggled in that game. Dampier was able to run all over them. You saw a lot of flaws defensively in that game, and you saw some flaws offensively. Despite the 61 points, Arizona couldn't move the football outside of throwing it to Tetero McMillan and having that connection. They finally got the run game going in the second half, but it seemed kind of a cluster, a jumble offensive unit. It wasn't a smooth running unit. So I think what you want to see in this Hawaii game is Arizona have a smooth game offensively, and a solid game defensively. You can't give up 39 points to Hawaii. And you want to see who works well together in rotations, not only offensively when you're rotating out receivers and running backs and sometimes linemen, but defensively too, when you're switching up the defensive pass rush, when you're switching up some guys in the secondary. You want to see how the unit gels in these situations. So I think it's a perfect game to get some kinks worked out and get some things in order. And I think it's also a perfect game as well for Arizona to test out some freshmen and some underclassmen to see how they handle the pressure of a Power 5 game against a non-conference opponent under the lights of college football in Tucson. I think it's a perfect game for that. And I think Weber State is that game as well for Arizona. Obviously a lesser opponent to Hawaii, but it's a game you shouldn't overlook. We've seen upsets all the time in college football. A la North Dakota State taking down Kansas State, North Dakota State being in it against Colorado, and there's other games like South Dakota State and other FCS opponents that have been able to compete against FBS teams, especially low-end FBS teams. Now, Weber State isn't North Dakota State, but I just don't think you should take that game lightly. I think Arizona should run away with a victory somewhere between, let's say, 63 to 70 to about 7-0. I think it should be a 63-point win. Again, you have to play the game, and we have to see what Arizona does in training camp. But it's one of those games that you want to build up confidence. You want to get the offense to humming in the Seth Dagey offense. You want to see everybody running smoothly, and you want to get the defense flowing in Danny Gonzalez's scheme and not choke too much, but you want to be able to go out there and put out a good performance and get everybody ready and geared up for that Kansas State game. It's kind of like you have, 2 exhibition games to get ready for the big game. I know Hawaii and Weber State, you don't want to overlook those important in games. Every game's important, but let's be real. Let's be honest. There should be no worry for Arizona fans in those games. You should go out there and you should crush the opponent and move on. Now, college football isn't that easy. Life isn't that easy. Things can happen, but that is the expectation of those games is you're going to be the heavy favorite. You should cover that. You should win those heavy favored games and dominate the opponent and get geared up for the main event, the main show, which is that Kansas State game. So look for Arizona to do that. Look for them to get in rhythm with their offense and defensive schemes. And more importantly, stay healthy. Health was a major concern last year for Arizona, and we saw them kind of drop like flies throughout the year, and it kind of started to pile up, especially on the defensive end. So Arizona needs to stay healthy in those games if they're going to have a chance to have a successful season. Now you look at Kansas State. Avery Johnson is a terrific young quarterback for Kansas State, can really run with the football. His passing game, there's some things left to be desired, but the running game kind of opens up the passing lanes for Kansas State. They'll have a good running back. They'll have good defense. They're very well coached. It's going to be a tough, gritty, grinded out football game. I don't think it's one that Arizona will be favored in. I could see Arizona being about 6.5-point underdog at home, somewhere around there, maybe 8.5. I don't think they're going to get a lot of love from the national media. I don't think they're going to get a lot of love from Vegas in that game. And it's a game where Kansas State probably will be ranked, I'm assuming, somewhere in the top 25 by that point in time. I think if Arizona is able to stay in the game, they're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to complete passes downfield given the opportunity, and they got to finish in the red zone. I think that was one of the biggest themes last season is Arizona was unable to finish in the red zone when it was most important. Noah Fafita was missing wide open guys at times. You can't miss those against Kansas State. So I look for that game to be a gritty game. I don't know if Arizona is going to win it right now. I'm not going to predict that game. But if Arizona can go 3-0 in the non-conference, I think they're setting themselves up for a special season. Because I think as you look through the whole entire schedule, the season schedule, I think it favors Arizona. I know a lot of Arizona fans think I'm a little bit crazy for saying that, but you have 8 games in the state of Arizona. One of them being at ASU, who is the defending Big 12 champ and just got to the college football playoff, but they're going to be missing some guys. So I don't know where ASU is going to be in terms of as a football program this season. And then Iowa State, Colorado, Houston, and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a very beatable opponent. Houston's a very beatable opponent. And Colorado might be as well, given that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are gone. Now, they've been able to recruit, but you just don't know how that's going to go. So 7 home games. You get Oklahoma State at home, and you get BYU at home. I think that is critical in today's college football. I think Arizona is going to have a good year. Now, what is a good year for Arizona? After going 4-8, if you can get to that 6-8 win in that range, I think that's a successful season. I look for Arizona to go 7-5 this year. We're going to have official predictions closer towards the start of the season, but I love the schedule for the Wildcats, but it all stems from what you can do in the non-conference. I think even if Arizona goes 2-1, they can get to a bowl game and be a successful team this year and a competitive team. But if you could go 3-0, you are setting the bar high and you're getting out in front of the 8 ball. And I think Arizona could set themselves up for a very good season.